And good evening, everybody. We're here once again on Spirit Reflections, episode 27, with my dear friend, the amazing composer, arranger, performer, teacher, artist, Lev Zhurbin, or also known as Ljova, from New York City's Midtown West all the way to New York City's Upper West Side, a few blocks up the street.
Right.
Hi, Lev.
Hey, how are you, Fred?
Good. Big hug here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good to see you too.
Awesome. So for those, so we're going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join in, and I'll play the opening vignette. And while people join in, Lev, I'll tell you a little bit about this Spirit Reflections for those
Tell me,
joining for the first time.
tell
This
me,
is
and
this
tell me
started,
how to share this too.
yeah, with pleasure. It's on Facebook and YouTube channels, and you can share it later.
Great.
So during the quarantine, we were here for 3 months. As you know, I sell real estate for a living, and so we were quarantined and indoors for 3 months without being able to do anything. And I said, I want to do something. I feel the need to do something constructive, something that will be uplifting, comforting, will generate some positive vibes in the air. And so this idea for spirit reflections came up. And spirit reflections basically means anything that is that causes people to reflect around who we are, where we're going, or where we come from, not necessarily in a religious way, but I bring people that are artists, that are scientists, that are people in all kinds of spiritual paths, and they share their life story with us, where they come from, and what kind of things they found along their path that have helped them be the person that they are, and the work that they do, how those things have influenced the work that they do. And the idea of around the fire, I think, came regarding this uh, ancient movement that we used to do back when we were hunter gatherers and small tribes, when at the end of the day we would light a fire at nature, and the people in our tribe would gather around the fire to eat, to sing, to exchange ideas about the day, to share friendship, to share trust, and to look each other in the eyes and share that common humanity. And looking up in the sky, like I have this backdrop here, look at the stars and just wonder what's out there. So it's in this spirit that we have these conversations. And so feel free to share anything you want. And if we have people that are going to ask questions, they can participate. The reason I asked you to come here is I remember when we met working at the Philharmonic Orchestra of the Americas, Alondra's orchestra, that watching a sea of musicians, 70, 80 musicians performing and rehearsing, that you would stand out many times because you radiated so much joy in your eyes, in your body language, and you looked like you were having such a great time. And the body language and the joy in your eyes gave me goosebumps. I remember time and time again, I said, wow, such a great attitude, such great charisma. And I admire that in you. So I said, let's bring him here.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
It's been it's been so long since the Philharmonic Orchestra of the America days, and we met last time in Midtown. I remember at Dina and DeLuca, and
right.
for a coffee, and we've all kind of evolved and done different things over the years, and we've been at your house for Thanksgiving numerous times,
Yeah.
and the day before we left for Taiwan, and for a tour, and it's just been wonderful to see your journey as well,
Thank you.
and your families, and yeah, good to be here.
And you have a beautiful family too. I would love to hear Ina one day sing for us, and
Ah, it'll be fun.
Benji. So it's really
They're
beautiful.
growing. Yeah. I mean, the kids are growing. Yeah. Benji's playing violin and here and there, and writing lyrics. Yossi's learning. Yossi's our younger one. He's learning different things.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah.
Somebody's getting. Oh, okay, cool. We're getting a comment saying that your sound is kind of far away to hear
Ah,
your.
so
Ah,
sorry.
there we
Yeah, the
go.
sound is up there. The microphone is up there. Let me bring it down a little bit.
Much better.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me bring it down a second. I forget because I'm, actually, what I could
Ooh,
do
that's a great
also.
mic.
Yeah, it's a. I'm an '87. Is this better? I can
Ooh,
also
yeah.
switch to the computer microphone, but
This
this
is
is probably
great.
just as well.
We love it. Yeah, this is much better. And so where were we? We were talking about our lives. Where last time we met in Dean and DeLuca, it's interesting you brought that up because we might touch on the subject matter later on as we talk about the current moment we are living in, not only in the world but in New York, with so many empty storefronts, and how art and music can play a role in
Yeah,
bringing that back to life somehow, right?
for sure, for sure.
So, for those that are just joining us, feel free to sign up to our channel, Spirit Reflections, ask your comments. We're going to put our opening vignette here, which is the official opening for every episode, and then we'll get right back to Lev and continue our episode. Here we go. So, as we were saying, Lev, take us a little bit back in time. How did you get to where you are today?
That's a very open forum question, and I don't know how much time you have for that.
That's
I mean, briefly, like the things that I would probably find important. Uh, let's see. I was born in Moscow, Russia,
okay.
to a composer father, Alexander Zhurbin, and a writer and vocalist mother, Irina Ginsburg. And so I grew up in an artistic family. My parents perform together often, as my dad would play the piano and my mom would sing. My parents perform together. They write songs together. They've been together for many many years,
Beautiful.
and they. Um, so I grew up in this family where my father was always writing music, my mom was always writing lyrics, and they were writing songs. There were, people. I was before the answering machine. There was me, and so I would be kind of like the people would call the house number, and I would write down who called, and it was probably some famous actor or a famous director. My father wrote Russia's first Russian rock opera in 1975. Oh, there's
This
my
is
dad
them,
there.
right?
Look at
What
that.
a
This is
lovely
very
photo.
fancy. Yeah. So that's my dad there on the bottom left. My father, Alexander Zhurbin, wrote Russia's first rock opera in 1975 and kind
Wow.
of became an overnight sensation around that time. At the same time, my father has a classical education. My father studied with in the St. Petersburg Conservatory, or in the Leningrad Conservatory as it was
At the
back
time,
then.
right? Yeah.
Um, um, he studied with Nikolai Peiko and had also lessons with Dmitry Shostakovich and Aram Khachaturian.
Wow. Wow.
So in addition, so and since '75, my father has been writing every possible strand, I think, of music. He's written, as I mentioned, a rock opera. He's written about 3 dozen musicals, several operas, 5 symphonies that have been premiered, and a sixth one that's slated to premiere in, I believe, September.
Wow.
He's written how many now? 4 or 5 books of commentary on his work, on work of others. He used to be a regular columnist for a paper here in New York. He had a radio show in Russia, a TV show in Russia. So he's been as much as possible involved in the arts, in music, in film scores, in concert
Amazing.
music. He has a violin concerto, viola concerto, a cello concerto, piano
Wow.
concerto, lots of chamber music, and a whole recital's worth, if not 2 recitals worth of music for the bayan, the Russian accordion.
Wow. Where can we listen to all of his music, Lev?
Well, it's funny. It's all kind of strewn about. I mean, if you type his name into YouTube, you'll find a bunch of things. Some the record of his rock opera Orpheus and Eurydice, which was released in 1975, obviously was released as a record and sold, millions of copies in the Soviet Union
Right.
back in the day. It's been reissued on CD and as a download. And if you type in his name into YouTube, you'll find all sorts of, like a totally random assortment of things, and if you type in his name into Spotify, I'm not entirely sure what you will find. At least you will find the Orpheus and Eurydice record because he re-released it on
Awesome.
Albany Records,
I'm gonna take a look. Albany Records. Okay.
on way back, I think in the late '90s, as a double CD and so forth. So my father's stuff is kind of strewn about very much and kind of disorganized in the online presentation kind of sense. But in the sense of it being performed, my father's works, well, pre-COVID, I guess, were regularly performed in theaters in Russia. Um, and the film scores have been,
Wow.
also all over various festivals. And for between 1990 and I guess the mid 2000s, my father also, while he lived extensively in New York, he also had a Russian American musical theater, which ran for, I don't want to lie, but probably about 10 years, maybe a little
Wow.
less. I'm not sure. I'm not,
Okay.
you
Sure.
know.
Sure.
And then he also founded the New York Festival of Russian Film, which he also ran personally for I think 3 or 4 years before 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And then yeah, and then things changed a little.
So you were born in Moscow, and when did
Yep.
you move to New York?
I moved to New York when I was 11 or 11 and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your musical career, I mean, your musical training begins in Russia with your parents' influence, of course, as
Yeah.
it sounds, very rich household of music all the time, right?
Yeah.
So when do you discover within you that, okay, I'm also like my father, an artist, a composer, and this is the path I want to follow? Like, did you have a moment?
It was like moments. So I started playing violin when I was 4, and it was one of those kind of bizarre, innocent childhood things where my mom asked me, would I be interested in playing the violin, and I kind of focused on the word playing and not so much the violin. Um,
I love this.
I thought, it would be fun. Yeah, playing. I was, 4. I would play in the yard. I would play with, little cars. I would play records on my record player.
I love this.
Play with sand. Play with a violin. Sure, why not? It's just playing, right? So I signed up to play with a violin, and I didn't realize that I was signing myself up for lessons, where it turned out that apparently I was, you know, as my teachers would say, I was talented, but only using an ounce of my talent or something like that. And so I started practicing and learning classical repertoire, and I did not really like that kind of did not easily take to that kind of education, but at least I don't remember liking it. I remember it being really, I felt like I was missing out on my childhood a lot, but at the same time I was always making music. I was trying to make up songs in the back of the car. I would always find myself gravitating towards the piano in the living room,
Mm.
plunking things out on it, listening to records all day from the collection of like children's folk tales that I had and there was a whole like adult collection of more adult things to listen to, like I don't know, Shostakovich and Mendelssohn and Mahler symphonies and Tommy the musical and Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which is not very adultish, but as a soundtrack. But I listened to all of these things, and I listened to them a lot, and I loved discovering the sounds of the orchestra, the sounds of music as a piece of drama, and I grew up making things. And when we got to the States, uh, I finally was able to quit violin lessons. I was about 11. I was able to quit, but then It's kind of a
So
curious.
I'm curious. I'm
Yeah,
curious about this actually.
yeah.
Did you felt that you didn't really like the violin lessons? Was it because you were playing a lot by yourself with the teacher, or you were already immersed in like youth orchestra settings when you're playing in groups?
It's funny. Part of it may have been that I wasn't immersed in youth orchestra settings because in at least in my education in Russia, it was all solo lessons and
So
no chamber music and no orchestra
that's
until I
tough.
don't want to lie, but it must have been at least until like seventh grade or so, or even later. And so we left Russia when I was in the middle of fifth grade, and so orchestra was still a while from there. I did play, I want to say, the Bach double concerto with the school orchestra. So I was in the special music school for gifted and talented children in Moscow,
Hmm.
um, which kind of, it's kind of like it's a school, but at the same time there are lessons, and there's
Like a
theory
magnet
and
program.
solfege. Yeah, it's pretty intense and kind of selective. And
Gotcha.
so I was in this school, and
So you guys moved
so
to
yeah,
the
we moved
States
to the States.
when it was Soviet Union or when it was already Russia after the Soviet
I,
Union?
it was changing over. I don't remember when the name formally changed, but we moved in 1990.
Okay.
It was 11 and a half, and I was accepted into the Manhattan School of Music Preparatory Division um, on scholarship. And I was studying violin, and I really didn't like it, and I really wanted to quit. And so I did. Finally, was able to quit. And but the thing is, my scholarship, I quit, I think at the end of December or in the beginning of January. But my scholarship was paid up through May,
Okay.
and my father had this brilliant idea that maybe he should trade in my violin for a viola, and then instead of quitting, I could finish out the year, and we don't lose anything if I try the viola. And and so he said, give it a try. And so uh, this viola came in the mail, and it was on the surface of it, it was a lot like the violin, right? Because it looks kind of similar, but the approach in the school was quite different. I was in the back of the second violins. It's that whole joke about what is a string quartet. One person is a good violinist, a so-so violinist. What is it? A failed violinist, and a person who hates the violin, right? It's somewhat kind of true. So, in the sense that I was a failing or a not very willing participant in the violin world, really, is what I
It's
would
very
say.
competitive amongst
Violin is
violinists.
very competitive. The E
Yeah,
string is super obnoxious. I
I
hate the
agree.
E string.
I agree.
So, you
I
know,
should I should try the viola actually now that I'm thinking
you
about
really
it.
should. If the violin is giving you the wrong kind of buzz,
Yeah.
you really should switch. Um, so I was in the back of the violin section. I had no chamber music, and I switched to viola. All of a sudden, I was like fourth stand viola or third stand viola. I could
Nice.
barely read the clef. I had chamber music. That summer, I went to a different music camp. I was playing more chamber music. All of a sudden, I was in demand. People were like, "Oh, we need a violist for this. We need a violist for that. We need a
Oh,
violist for that. Can you do this? Can you do that?" And all of a sudden, I was in demand, and we were, before you know it, I was playing in a Mahler symphony, or it's like a
wow.
dream come true. I heard, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, totally.
So it was a very kind of uh,
So it's not
felt different. It felt, much more collaborative, much more supportive. The atmosphere of playing viola was entirely different from the violins, and then, of course, there were maybe a third of us, right?
I
Yes,
can
there were
totally
being an
empathize
orchestra.
with your experience, Lev, because I have a similar experience because my degrees in music business wasn't in performance, but I had
Mm-hmm.
to do all of the performance classes, including playing an orchestra. And
Mm-hmm.
my violin teachers would shove me into the first violins, where the E string part would drive me nuts. And I couldn't just play those runs. It was impossible. I would try to ask to go back to second violins, but at least I'm playing just rhythms, a little more
Yeah.
accompaniment. So
So
I
there's
totally.
something to be said. Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven and Johnny Greenwood and a whole bunch of other people play viola because there's just more room for you to be a creative person. And so I ended up, in the viola section through the pre-high school years, and then I went to LaGuardia High School, and by that point I was writing music all day. By that point I was sitting in class and I would just like pretty much ignore whatever was going on in the high school. I was a terrible student. I was only good at writing music, and maybe social studies. Maybe kind of depends on the teacher. But I
Right.
was really just interested in spending all day writing, and I would come with like sketch pads and pencils, very much the same that I am now. Actually, I
Right.
come everywhere with sketch pads and pencils, and and these days noise canceling headphones, and
And one
pretty much do the
experience,
same thing I did in high school.
it's I could see that from the very beginning you were gravitated more towards the creation of music as opposed to the not necessarily just the performing of it, but the creation of it, right?
Yeah, and also, yeah, and also like I was even in high school and probably even before, I would always play chamber music, but I never thought of it as something that was set in stone. I never thought of it as something, well, the composer said this, therefore it should be that. I was like, yeah, but if he was around or she was around or they were around today, they would maybe change a few things, or I could ask them something, or maybe it also works this way too, you know?
Yeah,
So I was very
absolutely.
much that kind of guy. And so
And
I was always getting kicked out of chamber music because either for making these suggestions or worse, doing these kinds of things in the concert.
well, I appreciate that you do them because I remember one amazing story that we shared while we were on tour with Philharmonic Orchestra of the Americas is we needed an arrangement of Piazzolla's
Oh yeah, that
Four
started
Seasons.
my. This was this was the start. Well, go ahead, go ahead, go.
No,
Sorry,
and Alondra gave you a kind of like a Mission Impossible assignment to do these arrangements on the fly, and you turned them around, and it was the most beautiful arrangements. And I was just telling Gabby, who was the CEO at the time, who hired me. I'm so thankful for Gabby for hiring me.
right, right, right.
She convinced Alondra, like get Fred, and so I'm thankful for that. And we were looking at the rehearsal, and going, my God, Lev was how can he have done this in such a quick turnaround? It's so beautiful, right? So that started.
Well, I mean, that started my relationship with my arranger, or my relationship with Alondra as an arranger. It was wonderful. I met Alondra in a cafe. Like I was in there. So I was sitting in the back of a cafe which no longer exists, called Cafe La Fortuna on 71st Street, and I was sitting there working on arrangements for Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble. As I remember, I was sitting there arranging a piece called "The Silent City" by Kehan
Oh my
Kalhor.
God, I love that piece so much. You arranged that?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
So
gosh,
I
you
was
guys
sitting
should listen
there
to it. I'll share the link.
working on those arrangements in the garden there, and Alondra walked in, and I don't remember how we started talking, but we started talking, and she said, "Oh, I have this orchestra where we need a violist. It's just the usual story. Oh, you play viola? We need a violist." And it was I forget what the name of the orchestra was at the time, but
I
we
think
need
it
a
was
violist. Can you
Mexican
play?
American
Maybe I think this was even before
even
that,
before. Wow.
you
Okay.
know, and I don't think I. Anyway, so we met there, and I ended up playing in Alondra's orchestra. And when the Piazzolla arrangements came, I was by that point I had already arranged a whole bunch of things for Silk Road. I had done arrangements for Kronos Quartet. I've arranged a whole bunch of things, but this was and I've arranged my own film scores for orchestra at that point. But this was my first time kind of working with, possibly my first time working with a live orchestra here in New York. And, for me, it was just an opportunity. I saw these arrangements of the Piazzolla, and they seemed okay. Well, one of them was kind of for a student orchestra, and it didn't have any, it had some of the flavor, but not really. And the other one, was kind of like a combination of the Piazzolla and the Vivaldi Four Seasons, and it was kind of, I mean, it's I don't want to it has its own kind of brilliance, but it was a little confusing to the orchestra, I think, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I was like, okay, well, let me listen to the recordings. Well, but these recordings don't sound anything the original Piazzolla recording. They don't sound anything like either of these arrangements. I wonder if I could possibly write it out in a way that's a little more faithful to the recorded versions, if I can. I don't know if I can, and so I tried, and it worked
You
out.
did. You did.
Yeah, and I think that was like overnight or something like that, or
It was overnight. It was scary how
Basically
quickly you
overnight.
turned them around. Nice.
But I
So
love the music. I mean, I
it's
grew up
beautiful.
listening to Piazzolla music, and I love it so much. And listen to it
There's
again.
one concerto by him called the Nakar, I believe,
Yeah.
and there's like for I think nine soloists and orchestra, and I only know of one or two recordings of it, which unfortunately are in really bad quality. And I wish I could find or somebody could re-record with all of the different layers and flavors and magic that is in that score.
Yeah.
Um, so
Ah,
hopefully,
it's
once we're
amazing.
back, you know,
Would be
gatherings.
nice. That would be very, very nice.
Lev, tell us about the Fadolin. It says Lev, a
So
Lahova
yeah,
composer and Fadolinist.
yeah, Ljova composer and Fadolinist. Yeah, so the Fadolin, I'll bring it out for you. I guess I'll bring it out for you now. So I have in the early 2000s when my wife and I met, or in the mid 2000s when my wife and I met, I was a classical violist, and she was a folk singer in a gypsy band called Romashka, and they had a violinist in their band, and he went away for a summer, and I was their sub, except I played viola, right? So over time, it kind of and the next summer, my wife and I, well, my future wife and I, went to Hungary for a few months. She was doing a study abroad in at the university in Budapest, and we went to a couple of concerts. And there was a concert by a Greek band of the vocalist Savina Yanatau, and her violinist had a five-string violin. And then I heard another concert here in Carnegie Hall where my now good friend Zach Brock was playing on also on a five-string violin. And so I reached out to Zach and I said, Zach, do you know where I could possibly maybe get a five-string violin? And so I said, yes, Eric Acito. Eric Acito is a wonderful maker in Ithaca, New York, and he
Okay.
makes five-string violins, six-string violins, anything you want. So I contacted Eric. And Eric said that, yes, I'm making a new instrument. I'm not sure if it's going to be a five string or a six string. What do you think? And at that point, I had no money. And I said, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but whatever you make, can I try it when you make it? And so a few months later, we came back from Hungary, and he was finished with this instrument. And he made a six string, and it was like a six-string viola, six-string small violin, or a six-string small viola, or a large violin, something in between. And I tried it out, and I fell in love with it. It was a six-string. I didn't know what to do with the sixth string at all. I mean, I kind of knew the C
Was it
string
on
from
the
the
low
viola.
register?
Yeah, so it's a low F,
Low F.
and
Wow.
and it's a string that doesn't exist. There's no repertoire for it, and so I really fell in love with the six string, with the F string especially, and I started playing in the band in with this instrument that I now call the Fadolín. I called it the Fadolín because it has a low F and then the C, which is a do, so fa do, and then the rest of it
Oh,
is kind of like the violin. So it's really kind of simple, but it's an instrument of its own. Um,
and you
so
have composed a lot for it now,
and
right?
so it's funny. So there's not a whole lot of music for the six-string violin world, though. Interestingly, John Adams has a concerto called Darmed Big Sur, written for these days my friend Tracy Silverman. Then it was just like this guy on the CD jacket, Tracy Silverman, awesome violinist, and then we ended up playing. Actually, we played a couple of concerts in Sao Paulo
Oh, wow.
with Tracy and a gentleman named Caito Marcondes. Do you know him at all?
No, Kaito
You should.
Marcondes.
He's
Check him out.
super. You would have an interesting chat with him, I think.
Nice. I'd love to.
Percussionist and composer, and very, very, very gentleman. So we played a couple of concerts in New York City, Lincoln Center, and then a couple of concerts at Sesque in
Sesky.
Sao
Yeah.
Paulo, which was really a wonderful trip. Um, and so the six-string violin didn't really have anything except for Tracy's concerto. And so I played it. You could play jazz tunes on it. I spent a couple of years playing with Eric's Fadolin and loopers. I made an album called Solo Opus and did a whole bunch of touring with just myself and a 50-pound suitcase of looper gear. And
Wow.
then last year, in January, I was like, okay, well, what's the next scariest thing? Well, I've never played the Fadolín just on its own because there's no repertoire for it. So, okay, that sounds really scary. Why don't we just start
Create.
writing repertoire? Because if the instrument is going to have a life after me or after those of us who have Eric's fiddles, um, it needs to have some sort of printed
Some
repertoire,
repertoire.
maybe.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you could just play anything. You could play cello suites, you could play, violin suites, you could play jazz, you could play whatever.
Hey, Janine, good to
Hey,
see you here.
Janine,
Lovely
nice
to
to
have you
see
here.
you. So
Miss you.
last, I miss you too.
Mhm.
So last year, last January, I started a Patreon campaign to write new music for the Fadolin, play outreach concerts, and so forth. And so,
Nice.
we have a lovely motley crew. You're welcome to join.
Yeah, let me
I
post
post
this link in the
pieces, and
meantime.
I post pieces, and I post sheet music and videos and things.
I'm going to put you on solo while I look for this link.
All right, I'm going to be on solo for a second. So yeah, so last year in January, I started a Patreon, and I also commissioned the new Fadolin. It's kind of a midlife crisis kind of situation. I commissioned a new Fadolin from a gentleman named Nathaniel Rowan. Nathaniel's made a whole bunch of five-string instruments, and I thought the next logical step would be for him to make a six-string. He's a very talented maker out in Vermont. So I wanted to show you my new Fadolin. So this came up. This I received this from Vermont about a month before the pandemic hit in about mid-February, and I've been trying to play it in and try to learn what this instrument's all about. So, yeah. Let's see, what else can I tell you about it? It's a lot of fun, and it's kind of its own sound and its own music. Trying to make
Friends,
it
please
interesting.
go to Lev's Patreon link that you see here and contribute to the project so that we can have more music being composed by the Fadolin. It'd be amazing. And I will also look for the link if I can find it on Silent City, which for many times that piece has brought a lot of comfort for me because there's such a beautiful growth that's so slow and gradual. And when you get to the climax, I get goosebumps just remembering how that climax feels. And I would love for my friends here at Spirit Reflections to experience that. So I'm also going to look for that while you play some notes for us.
Cool. Yeah, I love Silent City, and I love Kahan, and my arranging work and composing work for Silk Road. I've written now a couple of pieces for them. Um, has been incredibly inspirational, particularly working with Kahan and writing out improvisations or hearing him play. The beauty and the sincerity of his tone and of his person too. He's an incredible person, you know, in conversation and in life. Um, so yeah, I've learned a lot from him. So you want me to play something? Do you think I've been talking too much? I think so too. So
No, let your music do the talking out for us.
so that's the low F there. So why don't I just improvise something? Or should I play something prepared?
I think you should
Maybe the
improvise
next
something that will be
piece.
more fun, something from your heart, whatever you want. Let your heart take you wherever you want.
That sounds like a good plan. Let's do that.
And this puts you here. Wow. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Ooh, beautiful. There's a very earthy quality to the lower registers. Quite, I was impressed by the sound of it. It almost felt
Yep.
cello like with the
Yeah. Yeah,
fullness.
absolutely. And when the few years that I toured with the Loopers, it was like an orchestra, in a string orchestra, and sometimes not even a string orchestra because I guess I should bring this back down. The it was like a string orchestra, but also like I was able to do all sorts of scratch effects and pizzicato effects that were more guitar like. And anyway, it's a fascinating
It's a
thing.
beautiful
Not
instrument.
nothing that I learned in school, but something that has schooled me. It's educated me how to make new music and surprised me in many different and unexpected ways, as I guess a surprise would.
Speak, Speaking of surprises, I've seen you play this instrument in your neighborhood of the Upper West Side a few
Yeah.
times. How was people's response to it?
Good, and especially with this instrument, I'm surprised that actually there's not more shock because this doesn't look like a normal violin, right? It's black, it's got paint on it, it's and people are just enjoying the music. I think people when you know it's been good. The point is it's been good. It's been very positive. Lately, in the past few weeks, I've been playing a lot in front of Symphony Space, which is a performing arts venue where here in New York City, where I uh, used to run a monthly series before the pandemic postponed the series. We played our last show on March 8th and had events booked through June. And of course, it all got canceled. But I've been playing on the corner of Symphony Space and kind of outside, and it's been very healing for me um, to play for people again, and it's been very healing for people. I think on the street, it's a very unsettling kind of time in the city where we don't know if we all walk around with this, you know, uncertainty over our health, which is the thing you hope that will always kind of be more or less constant. Um, but and then of course now with COVID, everyone being in various states of employed or unemployed or freelance gigs, being very sporadic and uncertain, and we're all kind of rethinking our futures and
Right.
our living situations, right? We're all kind of thinking, where are we going to go? What's the smart move? I remember in March when this all hit, like, oh God, should we move to California now? Let's move to
Right.
California now because December is going to be bad. Um, and so we're all making these decisions, and it's an interesting time. And for parenting, also, it's an interesting time with
Right. You have two
kids.
children, yeah.
So
So
so me
we're
playing music kind of is a is a wonderful way to kind of help
to heal in
heal all of this and heal the uncertainty and heal uh, the isolation and heal the loneliness and heal the whatever the online world, the pressures of the online world giving you news. Oh, did you hear this thing? No, I was out practicing.
yeah.
And so this kind of helps heal some of that.
And Lev, if there were no limitations of money, no limitations of time, no limitations of people and talent, what would be your dream for music in this moment for New York, where you are right now?
Um, I mean, for myself, I can speak for myself. I would uh, pretty much do what I do these days. I would pretty much, I think I would play on the street more
Okay.
because I think playing on the street, um, it brings a certain, like when you post stuff online, right? You don't know who's gonna read it. You don't know who's gonna react to it. And I
Or
feel
when?
like, or when, it's like when you play a concert in Carnegie Hall. Okay, you know that people will buy tickets. It's this thing. They expect a certain thing. You say what the program is. People, oh, okay, he'll play that. Okay, I like that guy, or that lady, or whoever. So you sign up for a certain thing. You kind of know what you're going in for. When you post things online, you don't really know what you're going in for, and you don't really know what you're going to say, and things change and context changes, and what you thought might be cool to say, a year ago might not be so cool anymore, and so things keep changing, and playing on the street is kind of a way of being in the moment and being in with an audience of no real expectations, right? And so you're responding to where they are and where you are, and it's a way of communicating that's very immediate, and um, it's very direct, and you don't pretend to be anything you're not, and they
Yeah.
don't pretend to be anything they're not. So I think I would play on the street more. It feels very natural. It feels very natural to the act of music making. We're there to make people happy. Sometimes they buy tickets. They don't have to. Sometimes they buy an album on Bandcamp and you make $10. Most of the time they don't, and you make 0.002 cents on Spotify. They're still lovely people. That doesn't make them any
Right.
worse,
Right.
So
Oh,
you
you've
know.
inspired me to do the same with my violin. And even though I do have a struggle with the E string, I'll stay away from it.
You notice how I barely didn't play on the E
Yeah.
string until the
Yeah.
very end? That was for
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Um,
you.
so, I would play on the street more, and I wish other people did too. Um, and
Yeah.
I wish there was less of a stigma around music education, like maybe the education part of it. Maybe people just play and jam and listen to each other's music. The more the more we listen to things, it's kind of like this image of people on the subway sharing earbuds, right? It
Right.
sounds a bit unsanitary, but the kind of the emotional aspect of it, of people sharing earbuds, of people sharing music, of people sharing a common language that is maybe musical. Um, that brings us all together, and I wish there was more of that. I don't know what I'm trying to picture this vision of what we're going to do in the winter, because right now I can go play in
Right.
front of Symphony Space, and it's all I'm having a good time. People who are passing by
The
are having a
weather's
great time.
nice. Yeah.
The weather is passable. There's even there's the Symphony Space is under scaffolding right now, so even the rain doesn't bother me. But at some point, it's going to get too cold, and I wonder what we're going to do after that. And I don't know. And I'm trying to figure out some kind of a bike contraption that'll be like this kind of a. If I had actually, if any of you watching there, you have a whole lot of money, what I really would like to do is this, kind of like, how, for like party rentals, there are these wraparound tents with a heater. I would love to have like a mini version of that, like something that's big enough for me, probably without a heater, because that would ruin the instrument. And I would love to like put it on, attach it to my bike and be able to get somewhere. And I was even like, I still have a big extra cycle, which is like a cargo bike, and I was thinking, oh, maybe I can figure out some kind of way of pedaling in place while I'm playing. That would be really fun because they would keep me warm. So
Nice.
it's these kinds of things that are a bit kind of above my pay grade, but it would be really fun to do, and a good way to get around town and find people and engage with people. And frankly, I don't really want the music to be something. Oh, this is extraordinary. I just want it to be normal. I want people
Normal. Yeah.
to. I want music to be a normal part of life that is not anything extraordinary. That's not anything that has a
You have to
billion or
dress up
billion
and
hits or something. No, music is
right.
part of your life. It's kind of like eating. You have a bagel in the morning. You play stuff. I
Right.
don't want to say you want to play some piece by Bach or Beethoven, or you want to play a bossa nova, or you want to play a merengue venezolano, or whatever. You can play whatever you want, but
Right.
just make it part of your routine. you know.
Yeah, I
And that's
hope
kind
this
of what it's about.
inspires the people that are listening that are talented musicians or artists in general that they can go out there and uplift the spirits of our New York City streets, especially as we go through winter time. Like you said, there's not going to be necessarily money or recognition that comes from it, but a feeling of community, a feeling of healing. Definitely for me, it's from that's what I got from our conversation just now. Just not pretending to be anybody but myself and just playing.
Yeah.
Lovely. Wow. Lev, I wanted to thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I would want to encourage people to look up Lahova or Ljova on the internet. Check out his amazing arrangements and music. And I'm going to put something here for us to close that I hope we have a chance to meet up in person soon. And actually, I was just talking with somebody over lunch about this sculptor who wants to get these empty spaces in the street and make art installations. And I said, well, I'm talking to a dear
Mm,
friend tonight who's a musician. Maybe we could do
mm.
something together to bring these spaces to life. Because after all, let's face it, they were suffering before, they're suffering even more now. And it might be an interesting, beautiful way to bring more life back to our city
Can we talk?
streets.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk to this person. I mean, if it's possible to make some sort of an installation that's also functional as a performing space, that is a shell from the wind, a shell from. That's basically it, right? If you can shell from wind, and if you can find some way of, mm, I mean, in the ideal world, some kind of a like two or three pods that are close to each other, so that people can play, like to see each other. So it's kind of chamber music kind of situation,
Right.
right outside in the winter would. I mean, that would solve a lot of problems. Or we all have to move to California, which is
Yeah,
a
it's on
burning new
fire over
problem.
there. Yeah, I'd
I
rather
know, I know.
find another place, maybe Florida. I
I
don't
know,
know.
I know. Oh God, no.
A lot of Floridians on our channel, but never mind.
Hello, Floridians. You're all gonna be fine. You're gonna
My
be
dear
fine.
friend, much love to you, to Ema, to your kids. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, keep that
Right.
music playing. And we always close our broadcast with a spiritual message in music, which is from the group The Fifth Dimension, that song Age of Aquarius, which was the greatest hit in
Of course, of
1969,
course.
which says, let the sunshine in, let the sunshine in, meaning let the music play and everybody stay safe. And we'll see you soon in our next episode, Around the Fire. Take care.